Imagine a moment where science quietly turns on a light inside the body, revealing what has been present all along but unseen. And this is where the HBV test truly begins. Hepatitis B does not usually arrive with warning signs or dramatic signals. It settles into the body softly, often years before a person ever feels unwell. The HBV test represents that rare intersection where modern biology gives us permission to look beneath the surface, not to create fear, but to create awareness. It is an acknowledgement that the human body carries stories long before it carries symptoms, and that health is often shaped in silence rather than noise. At a scientific level, this test is an act of listening. Blood becomes a language, carrying microscopic clues about viral presence, immune response, and cellular memory. When we draw a small sample and analyze it, we are not just searching for a virus, we are interpreting a conversation between the immune system and an invader that may have occurred months or even decades ago. This transforms the HBV test into something more thoughtful than a routine investigation. It becomes a moment where biology allows us to understand timing, exposure, and the body's attempt to protect itself without our conscious involvement. There is also a deeply human dimension to this awareness. Many people live with hepatitis B without knowing it, continuing daily life while the liver adapts and compensates. The HBV test interrupts this unknowing state gently, offering clarity instead of shock. It reminds us that knowledge in medicine is not meant to overwhelm, but to empower. By identifying infection early, the test gives space for monitoring, lifestyle adjustments, and timely care, shifting the narrative from crisis to control and from reaction to foresight. From a broader perspective, the test symbolizes how far science has evolved in respecting the body's hidden processes. Rather than waiting for damage to speak loudly through pain or failure, we now seek quiet signals that suggest imbalance long before breakdown occurs. This approach reflects a more mature relationship with health, one that values anticipation over emergency and insight over assumption. The HBV test embodies this philosophy, standing as proof that medicine is no longer only about treating disease, but about recognizing its earliest footprints. In this way, the HBV test becomes a pause in a person's life, a reflective checkpoint where science asks a simple yet profound question about what is happening beneath the surface. It invites individuals to engage with their health consciously, to acknowledge that absence of symptoms does not always equal absence of disease, and that awareness itself can be a powerful form of protection. This single act of testing carries within it the promise of clarity, the discipline of prevention, and the quiet reassurance that understanding the body is the first step toward honoring it. At the heart of the HBV test lies a quiet demonstration of the immune system's remarkable intelligence, a system that remembers, adapts, and records every meaningful encounter it has with the outside world. When hepatitis B enters the body, it does not simply pass through unnoticed. It leaves behind molecular traces that tell a detailed story of timing, defense, and response. The HBV test is designed to read this story, not by force, but by observation, allowing science to interpret how the body has responded to a viral challenge across time. What makes this process fascinating is that the test does not search for a single answer. Instead, it looks for patterns of markers that reflect different phases of interaction between virus and immune system. Some markers suggest active viral presence, others reveal past exposure, and still others indicate successful immunity, either through natural defense or vaccination. These signals are like pages in a biological journal, written not in words but in proteins and antibodies, each one produced with precision by immune cells, acting without conscious instruction. This complexity reminds us that immunity is not a switch that turns on or off, but a layered memory system. The body learns from exposure, storing information so it can respond faster and more effectively in the future. The HBV test allows us to see this learning process in action. A result showing immunity is evidence of a lesson already mastered by the immune system, while other patterns may show an ongoing struggle that requires careful observation rather than immediate alarm. In this way, the test teaches patience, encouraging understanding over assumption. There is also humility in recognizing how much work the immune system does silently. Day after day, it scans, recognizes, and responds to threats, maintaining balance while we focus on the visible aspects of life. The HBV test brings attention to this invisible labor, offering a rare glimpse into the body's internal wisdom. It reminds us that health is not static but dynamic, shaped continuously by encounters we may never remember and defenses we never consciously deploy. From a scientific standpoint, interpreting HBV markers requires respect for nuance. A single result does not define a person's health in isolation. It must be understood in context, alongside medical history, risk factors, and time. This reinforces a broader truth about biology. It resists simplification. The immune system speaks in gradients, not absolutes, and the HBV test listens carefully to these subtle distinctions. Ultimately, this aspect of testing reframes diagnosis as interpretation rather than judgment. It shifts focus away from fear of labels and toward appreciation of biological adaptation. By revealing immune memory and viral behavior together, the HBV test becomes a bridge between past exposure and future protection, reminding us that the body is not merely a target of disease, but an active participant in its own defense, constantly learning, recording, and responding in ways that sustain life. The liver is one of the most patient organs in the human body, carrying out its responsibilities with a quiet reliability that often goes unnoticed until something begins to fail. It filters toxins, stores energy, balances hormones, and supports digestion without asking for attention, even when under stress. Hepatitis B takes advantage of this silence, progressing slowly and often without pain, allowing damage to unfold in the background. The HBV test exists because of this quiet endurance, offering a way to recognize strain before the liver is forced to speak through symptoms. There is a subtle wisdom in understanding diseases that do not announce themselves loudly. In many cases, the absence of discomfort creates the illusion of safety, leading individuals to believe that all is well simply because nothing feels wrong. The liver, however, has an extraordinary ability to compensate, adjusting its function to maintain balance even when cells are inflamed or injured. The HBV test respects this adaptability by acknowledging that resilience does not mean invulnerability and that early awareness is a form of protection rather than panic. From a scientific perspective, this silence is both a challenge and an opportunity. Because hepatitis B can remain hidden for years, waiting for symptoms means waiting for damage. Testing shifts the focus away from reaction and toward anticipation, allowing medicine to intervene at a stage where monitoring, lifestyle changes, and treatment can preserve function rather than attempt to recover what has already been lost. This reflects a deeper evolution in healthcare, where the goal is no longer to respond only to visible illness, but to safeguard long-term equilibrium. There's also a philosophical lesson embedded in this approach. The liver's quiet endurance mirrors how humans often carry burdens without complaint, adapting silently until limits are reached. The HBV test encourages a different relationship with health, one that values listening before crisis and curiosity before neglect. It asks us to pay attention not only to pain, but to possibility, to the chance that gentle insight can prevent profound harm. In honoring the liver's silence, testing becomes an act of respect. It acknowledges the organ's role in sustaining life and recognizes that its strength deserves protection, not exploitation. Early detection allows for informed choices that reduce stress on the liver, from mindful nutrition to avoiding substances that compound injury. These decisions, guided by knowledge rather than fear, help maintain the delicate balance the liver works hard to preserve. In this way, the HBV test reframes prevention as a quiet partnership between science and the body. It accepts that not all threats announce themselves, and that wisdom often lies in seeking understanding before urgency demands it. By identifying hepatitis B during its silent phases, the test honors the liver's endurance while ensuring that silence does not become suffering, preserving harmony within an organ that has always worked tirelessly to preserve life. When we talk about hepatitis B testing, we are also speaking about an invisible network of human connection, where individual biology intersects with shared responsibility. Hepatitis B does not exist in isolation. It moves quietly through blood and bodily fluids, often without intention or awareness. In this context, the HBV test becomes more than a personal health decision. It becomes an act of consideration for others, a way of reducing uncertainty and protecting lives beyond one's own. There's a compassionate logic in choosing to know. Testing allows individuals to understand their status and make informed decisions that reduce the risk of transmission. This knowledge transforms uncertainty into clarity and clarity into action. Whether it leads to vaccination, monitoring, or treatment, the test empowers people to participate actively in safeguarding both their own health and the health of those around them. In this sense, science serves empathy, offering tools that allow care to extend beyond intention into measurable impact. Public health is often misunderstood as something distant or institutional, but at its core, it is deeply personal. Every test taking quietly supports a larger system of protection, reducing the spread of infection and guiding preventative strategies. The HBV test connects private awareness with collective well-being, reminding us that individual choices ripple outward in ways we may never fully see. This interconnectedness is not a burden, but a shared strength, rooted in the understanding that health thrives when knowledge is shared responsibly. There is also dignity in removing stigma through testing. Fear often grows in the absence of information, and silence can isolate those living with chronic infection. When testing is normalized, hepatitis B becomes a condition that can be discussed, managed, and understood rather than hidden. This openness fosters compassion, allowing communities to replace judgment with support and misinformation with science. The HBV test in this way becomes a quiet instrument of social healing. From a moral perspective, responsibility in health is not about blame, but about awareness. Testing does not accuse, it informs. It allows people to align their actions with reality rather than assumption. This alignment is what makes prevention effective and ethical, grounded in respect for autonomy and truth. The act of testing reflects a willingness to face uncertainty with honesty, a quality essential to both personal growth and collective resilience. Ultimately, the HBV test embodies the idea that caring for oneself is inseparable from caring for others. It transforms biological knowledge into social responsibility, reinforcing the idea that health is a shared space where individual insight contributes to communal safety. Through testing, science becomes a bridge between private understanding and public protection, enabling compassion to move quietly but powerfully through informed human choice. The HBV test stands as a quiet example of how scientific curiosity, when guided by human concern, can transform fear into understanding. For centuries, invisible diseases shaped lives without explanation, leaving people to confront uncertainty with anxiety or resignation. Today, the ability to detect hepatitis B through a simple test reflects a deeper shift in medicine, where the goal is not merely to react to illness, but to illuminate what was once hidden. This illumination does not overpower the individual. It reassures by offering clarity grounded in evidence rather than speculation. There is something profoundly human about the desire to understand what is happening inside the body. The HBV test answers this desire with restraint and precision, using knowledge accumulated through decades of research into virology, immunology, and cellular behavior. Yet the technology itself is not the true achievement. The real triumph lies in how this knowledge is applied with care, allowing people to engage with their health thoughtfully rather than fearfully. Science here does not dominate the human experience, it supports it. This balance between intellect and empathy is what gives modern testing its meaning. A result is not simply data, it is information delivered at a moment when reassurance, guidance, and understanding matter deeply. When handled with compassion, testing becomes an invitation to dialogue rather than a verdict. It opens space for questions, for reflection, and for planning a future that is informed rather than uncertain. In this way, the HBV test strengthens the relationship between patient and medicine, built on trust rather than intimidation. Scientific curiosity also carries humility. Despite vast advances, biology remains complex, and every test result is part of an evolving picture rather than a final answer. The HBV test reflects this humility by encouraging monitoring and follow-up rather than absolute conclusions. It acknowledges that the body changes over time, that viruses adapt, and that health is a dynamic process. This perspective helps individuals see medicine not as a source of rigid control, but as a companion in understanding ongoing biological change. At its deepest level, the HBV test affirms the idea that knowledge is a form of care. By replacing fear with insight, it allows people to make choices rooted in reality, whether those choices involve treatment, lifestyle changes, or simple peace of mind. It demonstrates that science, when practiced with humanity, does more than detect disease. It restores a sense of agency over one's own body. Through this lens, the HBV test becomes a symbol of modern medicine's highest purpose, not only extending life, but enriching the quality of how people relate to their health. It shows that when curiosity is guided by compassion, even a small vial of blood can become a source of understanding, reassurance, and quiet confidence in the body's capacity to be known and cared for.